Breaking news! A shooting war broke out in Beijing over a Chinese general who leaked nuclear secrets to the US. Or did it? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. And once again, the news is coming almost faster than I can report on it. It's almost breaking my brain. Earlier this week, I braved the fierce American snowstorm to report on how Zhang Youxia, top general and vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, second only to Xi Jinping, had been purged along with another top general, Liu Zhengli, which, on top of other purges from last year, can only mean one thing. Xi Jinping has gone full Stalin. Minus the glorious mustache, of course. But now, more explosive details have emerged, including reports of a shooting war in Beijing between troops loyal to Zhang and troops loyal to Xi. Yes, you heard me right. I wasn't being figurative when I said explosive. We got ourselves another Chinese civil war. At least, that's what a lot of people are claiming. On top of that, according to the Wall Street Journal, we now know why Zhang was purged. It's because he leaked nuclear secrets to the US. There's just one teensy tiny little problem. Both of these reports are bunk. Let's start with the firefight in Beijing. The story goes that the two men who were just purged, General Zhang Youxia and General Liu Zhengli, had a plan to move against Xi Jinping and arrest him at the Jinxi Hotel in Beijing, where she was going to be staying on January 18th. Only the plan was leaked 2 hours before the operation kicked off. So Xi fled and set up a trap, which resulted in a firefight between troops loyal to Zhang and troops loyal to Xi, with Xi losing 9 men. It's a good story. It's got intrigue, close escapes, gunfire, treachery, all the makings of a top-class spy novel. But where does it come from? Well, it would seem that it came from this viral tweet by Canada-based writer Sheng Shui, which then gained traction in the Mandarin-speaking world, especially among Chinese dissidents. It wasn't long before the English-speaking world picked up on the story and made it even more viral, with references to sources cited by Reuters and Bloomberg, especially after this tweet came out and garnered millions of views. Remember those sources cited by Reuters and Bloomberg. I'll come back to them. Clips showing Chinese military vehicles, military personnel moving around, and a picture allegedly showing plainclothes officers at Zhang's residence all seem to confirm that something serious went down. Only, there are several problems with the story. First off, where did Sheng get the info from? Apparently a friend who she referred to as X. No, not that one. Or that one. Good pull, though. So, that could be anyone. Or no one. There's just no way of verifying any of it. On top of that, the English version of the story referred to sources cited by Reuters and Bloomberg. See, I told you I'd come back to that. But what does that mean? Is it saying Reuters and Bloomberg reported on the story? Because if so, I can't seem to find either of those articles. You could literally just take 5 seconds on Google to confirm this, but the author of that post, correctly and sadly, assumed no one would even take that minimal amount of effort to fact check. If the tweet is saying a person that Reuters and Bloomberg cited in the past made these claims, it doesn't say anything about who they are or where that information is coming from. And there's no news of any kind of shooting coming from Chinese state-run media. Even when you take Chinese censorship into consideration, something as crazy as a firefight in Beijing between top Chinese officials would definitely have made headlines. The Prime Minister of Finland is in China right now. Would the UK Prime Minister confirm his trip to China if there was a civil war on the streets? What about all the embassies in Beijing, including the American one? They all just decided to keep quiet about this? It's just too big to keep hidden. So the idea that forces loyal to Zhang and Xi had a showdown in Beijing just isn't very credible. But what about the Wall Street Journal article claiming that Zhang was arrested because he gave nuclear secrets to the US? What's the deal with that? Well, the article says evidence against Zhang came from the former general manager of the China National Nuclear Corporation, a state-owned company that oversees China's civilian and military nuclear programs. It also alleges that she has commissioned a task force to conduct a deep dive investigation into Zhang's tenure as commander of the Shenyang military region, which spanned 5 years from 2007 to 2012. The team is reportedly staying in local hotels rather than military bases to avoid Zhang's network of support. Once again, good story. But where is it coming from? Well, the Wall Street Journal cites people familiar with a high-level briefing on the allegations. And that right there is a huge red flag. Yes, that one. You see, this Wall Street Journal story has all the hallmarks of being a CCP disinformation psyop plant. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. Christopher Balding, a senior fellow at the Henry Jackson Society and friend of the show, also calls it a psyop. Also notice how I named my source? See, journalism is easy. Meanwhile, State Armor founder Michael Lushi calls it CCP propaganda. And Human Rights in China founder Zhou Fengsuo says the story reads more like disinformation than genuine reporting. And there's a very good reason to believe this is the case. As Balding points out, does it make sense for any Chinese official, i.e. people familiar with a high-level briefing on the allegations, after hearing that a top leader got purged for allegedly doing secret communications with the U.S., to immediately go to an American media outlet and talk about it? We're talking about the same regime that brutally executed CIA informants in public. I know the CIA put out a video telling Chinese officials, hey, how about double-crossing China and helping the US? But do you think Chinese officials, especially those at the very top, would really do that? I never thought I'd say this, and I feel dirty doing it, but Chinese officials aren't that stupid. I need a shower. I think how Trump described his meeting with Xi Jinping and other CCP officials last year says a lot about the pressure officials face.
So he's here, and he's got about 6 people on each side, and every one of those people was standing like this. They were at attention. And I made a comment to one of them, and I got no response. I said, are you going to answer me? I got no response. And President Xi didn't let him have any. I never saw posture like that. I've never seen men so scared in their lives.
Scared, obedient dogs aren't the type to risk a beating from their abusive master the second someone flashes some dry kibble at them. They're more like Hassan Piker's dog. There are also so many questions worth asking. What could have motivated Zhang, who dedicated his entire life to the CCP and has family in China, to side with the US? If Zhang really did leak sensitive nuclear technology, then why wasn't it mentioned by Chinese state-run media? And how could Zhang, even in a position like his, get access to and share something as sensitive as nuclear secrets without getting caught? Actually, his position would be a huge liability since high-level officers in the CCP are monitored extra closely, especially by Xi. On top of that, there's a question that I have for the Wall Street Journal itself. Is there any way to check whether people familiar with a high-level briefing on the allegations aren't just misrepresenting information? Or just plain lying? I mean, communists lying. Who would have thought? And yet, we've seen this time and time again. Mainstream Western media outlets make entire reports based on anonymous sources or people familiar with a certain issue or people with access to the inner circle in China, only for that information to be false. For example, back in 2023, Politico cited people with access to top Chinese officials to report that former Chinese ambassador to the US, Qin Gan, had died either from suicide or torture in July 2023 at a military hospital. Only in October 2025, Qin was spotted at the 28th Beijing International Music Festival, which was the craziest revival of a dead person at a music festival since that hologram of Tupac. So, Chinese commentator David Tsai made a good point in saying that the Wall Street Journal has become the largest overseas rumor mill and top-tier mouthpiece of the Chinese regime's external propaganda. They've basically become TMZ, but for geopolitics instead of who Olivia Rodrigo might be dating. Keep in mind that the author of that Wall Street Journal article I mentioned, Ling Wei, is the granddaughter of a senior military officer in China. And she has a long history of using nameless China connections to write her stories, such as people close to Chinese policymakers, people familiar with matters, and people who consult with Chinese officials. At this point, you may as well also list your buddy's girlfriend who lives in Canada as a source. Ling has even outright pushed narratives that are false. For example, she used people close to internal discussions to push the idea that China's goal is now defensive. Doesn't look too defensive to me. She also used people briefed on the matter to claim Trump told Japan to lower the volume on Taiwan to not provoke China, a claim that Japan denied. Which makes sense because when has Trump ever lowered the volume on anything? And so I'm very skeptical of the Wall Street Journal's nuclear leak report. So, what do we know, since these two stories are basically fiction? Well, there's no denying that she must have felt threatened by Zhang and Liu. Because, shocker, the guy that gets freaked out when someone depicts him as Winnie the Pooh isn't the most secure guy. Chinese state-run media circulated this front-page editorial against them, titled, "Resolutely Win the Tough, Protracted, and Overall Battle Against Corruption in the Military." It used very similar language to the one used against past purge generals, like really similar language. Only whereas previous purge generals were accused of serious duty-related crimes involving extremely large amounts of money, the accusations against Zhang and Liu seem to be exclusively focused on politics. As Chinese dissident Guo Baosheng points out, it's a similar tactic Joseph Stalin used during his Great Purge, when he accused top Red Army Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky of selling intelligence to Germany. One has to wonder, if China wants the world to focus so much on the alleged nuclear leak, what kind of information is it hiding? This is basically the Chinese version of some American politicians doing anything they can to distract from the Epstein files. Like it or not, China is a black hole for information when it comes to elite party politics, and that's by design. Anyone who claims to really know what China's thinking down to the nitty-gritty details is lying. They're just as clueless as everybody else. Without recognizing that, we could easily fall for Chinese misinformation and end up thinking and doing exactly what the party wants. If you want to stay up to date on the latest China news, sign up for my free weekly newsletter. Just click here or the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.